If you own a home in Greater Vancouver or you're thinking about buying one, must listen this until the end. There is one thing you need to understand about the July numbers. The market didn't crash, but it didn't recover either. And the most interesting part isn't actually the price, it's what buyers are doing. Because July may have answered a question that a lot of people were asking after June. Was the market finally turning around? The answer is not what some people were hoping for. Let's get into the numbers. Greater Vancouver recorded 2,061 residential sales in July. Now, at first glance, 2061 is just a number, but compare it with July of last year. There were 2,286 sales. So we're down 9.8% year over year. Still, that comparison alone doesn't tell us the full story. Here's the number I want you to remember: 18.6%. Because July sales were also 18.6% below the 10-year seasonal average. The typical July has produced about 2,532 sales. This July, 2061. So we're not just having a slower month compared with last year. We're significantly below what a normal July has looked like over the longer term, and that tells us something important. Buyers are still cautious. But wait, if buyers are this cautious, what is happening to the number of homes available? That's where the story gets interesting. There were 16,476 active listings in Greater Vancouver in July. And here's the first surprise: active listings were actually 4% lower than they were a year ago. So if you're listening to this and thinking, wait a minute, sales are down, but listings are also down? Exactly. And that is why I would be very careful about calling this a simple supply problem. Something else is happening. Sellers are pulling back too. New listings in July came in at 4,991. That's down 11.5% from July 2025. And here's another interesting detail: that number is basically right on the 10-year seasonal average. So we're not seeing sellers flood the market with new properties. We're seeing something much more subtle. Buyers are cautious, sellers are cautious, and both sides are waiting. That creates a very different market from a full blown crash. Now, here's the number that tells us how much leverage buyers actually have: the sales to active listings ratio. Greater Vancouver's overall ratio in July was 13%. That's important because the market is generally considered balanced around the 12% to 20% range. So at 13%, we're sitting very close to the lower edge of balanced territory. But look underneath that number: detached homes, 10.5%; attached, 15.8%; apartments, 14%. So the market isn't behaving exactly the same way across every property type. And this is where a lot of generic real estate headlines get it wrong. They say Vancouver market is up or Vancouver market is down. But which Vancouver market? A detached home, a townhouse, a condo? Because the numbers are telling different stories. Let's start with detached homes. There were 639 detached sales in July. That's down only 3.2% year over year. Now compare that with apartments: 952 apartment sales, and that number is down a much bigger 17.8%. That's the number that caught my attention. Almost one fifth fewer apartment sales compared with the same month last year. And because apartments make up such a large portion of the market, that weakness matters a lot. Now look at townhouses. There were 454 townhouse sales. That's down just 1.1% year over year. So put the three numbers together: detached, 639 sales, down 3.2%; townhouses, 454 sales, down 1.1%; apartments, 952 sales, down 17.8%. Do you see the difference? This isn't a market where every property type is behaving the same way. The apartment segment is clearly showing much weaker sales activity. And that brings us to the next question: is that weakness showing up in prices? Yes, but again, the answer is more interesting than simply saying prices are falling. The Greater Vancouver Composite benchmark price in July was $1,088,800. That's down 0.9% from June and down 6.2% from July last year. Now, 6.2% sounds dramatic when you hear it as a headline. But look at the monthly movement, less than 1%. That's not what a sudden collapse looks like. It's a gradual adjustment, and that's an important distinction. We're seeing prices lower than they were a year ago, but we're not seeing some giant 1 month price collapse. The market is moving, just not quickly. The entire entry level engine of Metro Vancouver real estate just pulled the emergency brake. First time buyers and investors are officially sitting on their hands. 42% of buyers who purchased their homes in 2021 or later are now asking less than what they originally paid. And that's not the only warning sign. Foreclosure listings are also starting to spike. For some sellers, this is creating a very difficult situation. They're losing equity, and in some cases, they may actually have to bring money to the table just to sell their property. At the same time, we are seeing roughly 5,300 unsold listings, properties that have either expired, been terminated, or simply been taken off the market. And some sellers are saying, I'm not selling for less than I paid. So they're waiting and waiting. Some properties have now been sitting on the market for more than 60 days. But here's the biggest change: buyers aren't being forced to rush anymore. They have choices, they have leverage, and they are taking their time. That means if you're planning to buy, sell, or invest in Metro Vancouver or the Fraser Valley this year, do not make a life changing financial decision based on generic media headlines. Because real estate is not one market. A condo in downtown Vancouver can be performing very differently from a townhouse in Coquitlam, and a townhouse in Coquitlam can be performing very differently from a detached home in Surrey. Your neighborhood matters, your property type matters, your price range matters, and your specific situation matters. So, if you want to know what these numbers actually mean for your neighborhood, your street, or your property type, send me a direct message with the word July. I'll send you a custom breakdown of your local micro market so you can understand what's really happening and make your next move with clarity. And if you found this update helpful, hit subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments, and tell me where you think prices are heading next. I'll see you in the next update.